Hi guys, my name is Pascale Diaine. I'm a partner at Storm Ventures. Storm Ventures is a fund based in Silicon Valley that invests only in B2B enterprise software companies, mostly SaaS. And we usually jump in when a company has reached product market fit and is ready to raise a Series A. We are super excited about working with European companies. Part of our portfolio counts companies like Pipedrive, Algolia in France, Talkdesk with the R&D in Portugal. So we love working with startups that are based in Europe and are excited about entering the US market. Today, what I want to talk to you about is unlocking massive growth and this transition between what we call survival to thrival. And usually there's a very frustrating period for startups. That is when you feel like you have product market fit, yet you're not growing as quickly as you hoped you would. And basically, you usually have a great plan on linear growth that is just going to get there, and really, it doesn't get there. And you kind of see the business flatten, and you kind of get stuck between the product market fit and this idea of scaling and dominating a category. Really what happens is because there's a big difference between B2C company and B2B company. You can't just, find your audience and scale your budget in terms of ads. It's not that simple in the B2B space. There's a lot that happened, a bunch of factors that need to be taken into account. And at Storm Venture, we call that the go-to-market fit. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about, is that missing link that is rarely clearly explained, that needs to happen for you guys to see your ARR go from 500, 600K to 10, 20, 50 million per year. So how do you find that go-to-market fit? And what is that magic link? It's really about avoiding the pitfall that is you thinking that because you have a big Rolodex, you can easily scale. It's not about the relationships you have, it's about the repeatability of the sales model. And you as a person don't scale. So as a CEO, you have the magic touch and you can sell a lot and you can easily get to 1 million in ARR. But at some point, you're going to have to scale that process, and you as a person, you don't scale. So what is the difference between product market fit and go-to-market fit? And we like to use the analogy of surfing. I don't know if you ever surfed, but if you have, you know that there's this period where you have to align with the wave and you have to paddle and you have to deploy a ton of energy. So you're gonna paddle and move 2 meters, right? As opposed to catching a wave and standing up, hopefully you don't fall as you catch the wave. And at that point, you just move very quickly with very little effort. And that's what we call the go-to-market fit. So really the idea is that product market fit is painful and takes a lot of time, but once you've done the work to paddle correctly, then you catch the wave, everything becomes easier. So how do you find go-to-market fit? We break it down in 3 steps, and I'll go through every step independently, but the idea is catching the wave, lining up with the urgent wave. It's about leads, it's about pipeline, it's about being very strategic to the customer. Then it's picking the right surfboard, which is your go-to-market model. And then it's about riding the wave, which has a lot to do with the playbook and the sales playbook that we'll talk about too. So how do you catch the wave? And how do you line up with an urgent need, an urgent pain in the market? I'm gonna skip a little bit because I only have 25 minutes, but really the idea is when you're in your product market fit stage, your role is to explore and try to discover where the pain is. You really need to find that burning pain, and maybe it is not just the mid-market. Maybe you're in the enterprise space, that's where it resonates more. Maybe you should try the SME space. Maybe you should try different verticals. Because even if you feel like you're getting traction in a certain market, it's good to explore outside of the founding idea, which could be considered as heresy for some founders, but it's important to stay open and dig deeper and a bit wider a wider net than what you originally thought, because you might be surprised that there's a lot of hot spots and hot pains outside of what you initially thought. We like to talk about an example in our portfolio. It's a company called Mobile Iron, and they do mobile device management. And initially, they were really going after the BlackBerry, the kind of like device before the iPhone. And as they started digging deeper in the pain of our customers, they realized that they were getting always the same request, which was the head of IT having a big headache of their employees wanting to use their personal phone, both for professional and personal usage. And so that's why they decided that maybe they should develop a client for the iPhone. And that was kind of a feature on the roadmap. That was not the main thing in the roadmap. But because they kept an open mind and decided to give more thoughts to this iPhone request they kept getting, they jumped in and developed that like pretty robustly. And that's what changed completely the trajectory of the business. So again, like the idea of keeping an open mind as you look for your product market fit and try to understand what is the pain that resonates the most with your audience and your target market is really what matters at first. And here's kind of an example of how you can try to explore and kind of a bit of a process into the exploration. And I'll share my slides so you have access to that little graph. Move to the go-to-market model. The idea of the surfboard and how you should pick your surfboard. There's many go-to-market models that you can explore. Some are sales-led, super high-touch sales team, so an outbound team, SDRs, AEs, with really like an interaction with your prospects or your potential customers along the way. Then there's partner-led, when you really have channel partners that kind of bring the leads to you or even close the deal for you. Then it could be marketing-led, when you get your leads and your qualified leads through marketing and nurturing campaigns. And then maybe you're gonna, have a sales team kind of take over, or it could be product-led, like fully self-served, where you just need sales reps to upsell your customers that are already signed up and onboarded on their own, which is an amazing model, very cheap. But what you really have to do is kind of decide which model you go for and test one at a time, or you could find yourself trying multiple things at the same time and not really understanding what you're testing. But what's key in that sales model is really understanding how to pick your head of sales. Because the life of a head of sales, the cycle of a company changes tremendously. And initially, you do a lot of the sales, right? But you are the founder and the CEO of the company. You live and breathe the product. And when you're going to hire your first sales rep, you're going to get frustrated that they can't sell the way you sell because you have the magic touch as a founder. And your sales rep cannot sell the same way you sell. And so the idea is at first, when you hire a sales rep, you want to hire a Davy Crockett. You want to hire a sales rep that will be able to articulate the sales playbook, not being the CEO, which is very important. And so it's the idea of articulate how many touch points happen between the first interaction with your prospect and the close of a lead, and really building that sales playbook. Once that sales playbook has been built, and then it's working, then you need to hire very quickly and rally a bunch of sales reps under that sales playbook. And that's when you need a brave heart or a gentle heart for the female counterpart. And so that's the idea of a charismatic persona that can hire very quickly, can motivate, can get a sales team, a team of AE and SDR super pumped and excited. And that's very different from a Davy Crockett. And then as you scale and you start to dominate a category and crossing 20 million in ARR, then you need a strategist. You need a Dwight Eisenhower. You need somebody who knows how to develop geos. We need somebody who is an architect. Maybe, Eisenhower has never been on the battleground, yet he really helped us win the Second World War. So that's the idea that the profile of your head of sales evolves tremendously over the year, and it's very critical to be careful when you hire that VP of sales at first. Maybe not call him VP of sales, maybe call him the head of sales until you make sure that he's able to build that sales playbook. Let me skip that. And then let's talk about riding the wave. And I'm gonna kind of repeat myself, but it's really about that sales playbook. The sales playbook is really what's going to help you ramp up your sales rep from one first day to 3 months. When you think about it, like when you send us your business plan and you tell us like 3 months to ramp up your sales rep, is it really realistic? The only way to make it realistic is to have that sales playbook. Are you able to clearly and simply articulate what happens at every stage of the sales process? And again, that sales playbook should fit on one page. It's not like a Bible of hundreds of pages. And it's just not just for the CEO and the VP of sales. It's really for every new employee joining the company to understand what happens in the journey of a customer from the first time they talk to you to becoming and onboarding as a happy customer. Me to give you some examples. So here, for instance, here's one example of a customer journey. So here it could be that you got your lead through sales from SDR or from marketing. And then you get a first meeting with your customers, you get a second meeting with the customer, then an evaluation, a benchmark they do internally. Then you go through an exec meeting where you have discussion with leaders about the evaluation, and then you win. So basically, that's one way. There's many other ways, and I can talk about that in a minute, but that's just one example. What's important is once you've been able to articulate what happens, then you need to be able to explain what to do and say at every step of that stage, and really be able to identify the wow factor during that journey. So I was talking about your first head of sales, that's the David Crockett. That's exactly the role he has to do, that's to build that sales playbook. And spending so much time with all the prospects to be able to hear all the pushbacks and hear all what we call the wow factor in your sales playbook. So you have a pitch, and then you sense it when you have a discussion with a prospect that at some point there's some part of the discussion that get the prospect very excited. And that's really important to document all of that, because if you hear enough about this excitement within the sales pitch, this is probably something you want to spend time on, because the sales playbook is very much a living object. And you should constantly think about your sales playbook as a guidance to an extent to your roadmap. And so these wow factor are key, not just for the articulation of the sales playbook and ways to build and document what to say at every stage of the process for your sales rep, but it's also very important for the future of the roadmap of the company. And that's kind of where I'm going to, what the rest of the company do to support the playbook. Is like, it's very important for the engineers to hear about what excites the prospect during the sales pitch, because the engineer will then understand why you're asking all this modification in the roadmap or reprioritize the roadmap a certain way. So this sales playbook is kind of really the backbone of the company, at least until you really accelerate the business, to really make sure you fundamentally have hit your product market fit, and that product market fit is there, and the fit is even better and better as you talk to more and more customers and get more and more feedbacks on what really excites the prospect and potentially leads to category domination. And again, today we live in a world of metrics, of data. There's tons of tools out there that you can use where metrics come for free, and where you can really track and understand the conversion from one stage to another within your sales playbook. So here is an example of playbook. I think this one is from Bull Iron. So yeah, you can see how things are documented from one meeting to another. and really how your sales rep, as they on board, how they can use this content to ramp up better, be more efficient, and get to hit quota as soon as possible. Here are other examples of sales playbook. So we're talking about the sales-led playbook, where it's really like a mix of marketing and SDRs to generate the leads and all the steps after. You have other type of models. So the one we call marketing-led with inside sales, which is really about a big work online with your marketing team. Then you can have webinars, nurture the leads generated by the webinar. Then you have a free trial, drive usage, then have your inside sales team jump in to nurture the leads generated by the previous work, and then get to a purchase commit. Then the onboarding, live production kind of done with your customer success team. And then you have an upsell and renewal team that can jump into towards the end of that process to really grow the ACV per customers. And then we talked a little bit about that, the product-led model, which is kind of think about a Dropbox or box model, where it's really like hands-off, no real sales team. It's all self-serve, lead generated by marketing, nurturing through the website, free trial, usage are kind of self-driven, the payment is self-serve, and so on. Those are great models. They're cheap. They're usually, really require team rates, but also usually the ACV is not as high. So really how to find go-to-market fit and kind of a recap of what we just talked about. So first is catching the wave. So lining up with an urgent wave. So what is the pain? Really be careful when you find your go-to-product market fit to not miss any hot space that you might miss if you just try to commit to your initial idea as a founder. Then the right surfboard. What is the right go-to-market model? And kind of like try one at a time, but stick to one at a time so you really understand what you're testing. Then ride a wave, which has to do with that sales playbook we just talked about, this articulation of your sales process and making sure that your sales rep are well equipped to ramp up and become efficient as soon as possible. So I talked a little bit about, what we talk, how we call the survival to thrival, the go-to-market fit in the middle, but really we think about what happens before go-to-market fit is the survival step, is when you found the company and then you look for product market fit. And it's a painful step. We talked about paddling, deploying a ton of energy, not moving that fast. Then there's the thrival after the go-to-market fit we just talked about. When you ride a wave, everything becomes easier. You generate a lot of cash, and you become a category leader. It's awesome. But there's a lot that happens during these steps. And then I just wanted to give you a couple of pointers on how investors think about what happens during these steps and what are they looking for to understand if a startup is close to hitting go-to-market fit. But basically what happens in this transition is that we look a lot at the growth rate. So you'll see a lot of successful companies here. They're at the same pace. They 3x their ARR when it's still not that big, 3x, 2 years in a row, and then you see 2x for the following 3 years. And then, we spend a lot of time looking at productivity and what we call sales efficiency. So we look at how much money is spent in sales and marketing. And we want to see every dollar spent in sales and marketing becoming $1 in new ARR after a sales cycle. And that's what kind of like how VCs call it the magic number. It really helps us understand if you're under one, it means that you're not converting, like there's some problem in your efficiency. And usually it comes when you hire a VP of sales or you ramp up a big team. It's gonna dive under one. But at some point you should go above one. Gross and net retention, we like to see, above 85% in gross retention, 110 in terms of net retention. Those are good signals for us. And gross margin, obviously, we like to see anything above 75%, 80% is even better. But that's kind of what we see in the SaaS world. And so, how we kind of define the signals between product market fit and go-to-market fit. So product market fit would be, 10 happy customers, a good gross retention, and, the use cases, you find your urgent pain, then you onboard your customers, there's metrics, so there's usage that happen that you can track with metrics, which means there's value given to your customers, which validates the urgent pain that you've been identifying. But really what we call go-to-market fit, and the difference between product market fit and go-to-market fit from a VC perspective that is trying to look at your business and think, is this company really accelerating? Is that instead of 10 happy customers, you have 10 referenceable customers, which is very different. Customers willing to jump on a call with us, with the VCs, to talk about how much they love you. Very different. Then the same use case across all the customers, right? So it's really the idea that we start seeing a repeatable sales process because it's the same use case, which makes us feel better about the ability of your business to scale. Then that goes along with the same ideal customer. And then really it gives us the idea that you're ready to catch the wave, that your leads are healthy, and that you'll be able to convert these leads into customers. Also, something we look at is like sales team members, sales reps that are successful and hit quota. That's a great way for us to validate that your sales playbook is there and it's working because your sales rep are able to ramp up and they're not you and they're still able to sell. Very healthy signals that you guys are getting there. And then, when you accelerate to category leader, you get to 1,000 customers, everything is fast and repeatable. The onboarding is smooth, and you get the idea. So really what happens is as you get out of the survival phase and you get into the acceleration phase, everything becomes easier, really. And it's a virtual cycle that happens. It's easier to acquire customers. You get recognized as a category leader, so it's easier to raise money at a higher valuation. It's easier to hire. You have cash, you have reputation. And then it's just easier to invest more aggressively in all your sales and marketing, in your product, which just feeds that cycle of faster customer acquisition. But the downside of growth is that when the company grow, things, the roles and responsibility within the company grow as well. And you find yourself in a situation where you may have to make difficult decision to let go of some of your initial employees that just can't fit the bill anymore. But let me come back to that. So basically the idea is, and I didn't invent that, like two partners at Storm, or a partner at Storm and an ex-CEO of the portfolio wrote a book together on everything I talk about. The second one is called Change or Be Changed, and it's this idea of if you do not change within a company as the company change, you have to be changed because the roles and responsibility within the company change tremendously. So again, this idea, go-to-market fit I just talked about, catch the wave, pick the right go-to-market model, ride the wave, be careful, build your sales playbook correctly. But most importantly, know that you're not alone. It's a journey every single B2B entrepreneur is on and has struggled with. Crossing 1 million in ARR is extremely difficult. And so, but once you get there, once you find your groove and you get close to 2 million in ARR, in theory, in practice, something happens in your business and you should get very easily, especially if you spend a lot of time on your sales playbook and your go-to-market fit. And again, I just wanted to bring your attention to the 2 books that were written by Diaine, partner at Storm Venture, with Bob Tinker, who's the ex-CEO of Mobile Iron. They wrote the first book, The Company Journey of Survival to Thrival, which breaks down the go-to-market fit that I just mentioned, and really kind of like the entire life cycle from inception to category leader within your space. And the second one that I just mentioned, Change or Be Changed, and this idea of the roles within the company evolving as the company grows. So with that, I can't see my time anymore, but I think I'm roughly there. So it was great talking to you guys. Thanks so much for listening and giving me a chance to take you through that story. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and happy to answer anything offline. Thank you.